Hi, I'm Yael Reisman. I'm the Director of Communications and Field Building here at Footsteps. Footsteps is an organization that works to support and affirm individuals and family who are leaving ultra orthodoxy or contemplating leaving ultra orthodoxy. And today we're here with Zalman Newfield, who is sharing his brand new memoir, Brooklyn Odyssey: My Journey Out of Hasidism. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Hi, my name is Zalman Newfield, and I'm the author of Brooklyn Odyssey. I'm also a professor of sociology and Jewish studies at Hunter College, and I'm a member of Footsteps and a board member of Footsteps. And I'm so excited to be here today to talk about my book.
Your book is fantastic. I really, truly enjoyed reading it, and I'm really excited to talk with you about it. First of all, if I may, what inspired you to write this book?
When I told people that I was writing a memoir, they're like, "Are you dying? Like, why are you writing a book? You're so young." And I think there are a few reasons. For one, I often meet people outside of the Orthodox community, and as soon as they learned that I grew up in the Lubavitch community and that I had left, they'd ask me a million questions. And it's not that I didn't enjoy talking to them. I did, but I was like, wait, I could just put this in a book, and then people will have it.
It's efficient.
People could read it, And then, but the truth is, once I started to think about what kinds of stories I'd want to put in and what I was interested in writing about, I got sucked into it. I got sucked into the process. It turns out I enjoy writing, and also I felt like there were things about the Lubavitch community that I was raised in, as well as about the process of leaving the Hasidic community that weren't necessarily being captured. And I wanted to give voice to those things as well. And I hope I did.
I think you did. Your book does do so many things differently. Your story is so different. I don't think we've had in recent memory a memoir from someone who's left Chabad-Lubavitch community, especially in Crown Heights. Um, and it's really interesting to get a view of what it was like growing up and also what it looks like one way to leave. You were around when the Rebbe was alive, and then after his passing, the story begins there for you in your memoir. Do you want to talk a little bit how you situated it there, or
Sure.
why?
Sure. So, right. So, why did I situate it that way? Because the Rebbe was such a big part of my life. And I think for outsiders, even people, Jewish people, the level of attachment and devotion that Lubavitchers had and continue to have to the Rebbe is really unprecedented. And this was such a big part of my life. And ironically or not, even years after leaving the Lubavitch community, I still have a very warm spot in my heart for the Rebbe. Growing up, this was the most natural thing. We talked about the Rebbe as unser Vater, our father, and we were the Rebbe's children, and we loved our father. We also, believed that the Rebbe had sort of supernatural powers, that the Rebbe was able to know what we were thinking, the Rebbe was able to tell the future, the Rebbe was able to give people blessings. Growing up, I was told by my own mother that I was a quote Rebbe baby. The reason why I was alive was because of the Rebbe's blessing.
There really doesn't seem to be a parallel to that, and obviously other Hasidic communities have Rebbes, but it doesn't seem as personal, that connection.
Yeah, so Lubavitch is a really kind of interesting phenomenon. There's a sort of parallel phenomenon about the Rebbe in particular. The Rebbe attended university before the Second World War. He attended university in Berlin and in Paris. And so the Rebbe had a certain kind of profile as, obviously he's a Hasidic leader, but he's also modern in some way, or in touch with the sciences, with, worldly knowledge. Yes, Lubavitch has this kind of profile as being more open-minded than maybe your typical Hasidic community. There's a kind of internal community, internal dynamic, and that dynamic is very different from what people assume Lubavitch to be about. Growing up in Lubavitch, growing up in Crown Heights, the Rebbe would encourage parents and schools not to teach any secular studies at all, not to teach the ABCs, not to teach any mathematics. As a result of that, I didn't learn English and I didn't know how to read English.
You came to a point where you were essentially like begging, like quietly, for someone to help you read because it was such a barrier.
Not only did we not read English books, but even, religious texts it was a very, very narrow focus. I was so excited to get this book. I actually kind of broke into the yeshiva office, and we made photocopies because we wanted to have this book. The point is, I was genuinely interested in all kinds of things, including things that were very much a part of Judaism and Jewish history, but were considered taboo and outside the bounds of kind of acceptable materials for the Lubavitch yeshivas.
When you start reading secular books after you learn how to read and you start gain fluency and speed, you're still living at home, I think, for part of that. It's kind of like a don't ask, don't tell. Like your mother knows that you're reading these books. It's already interesting to think that there is a situation where a very devout Hasidic person would allow their children, or you would be in a Hasidic home where books are seen as like, oh, it's Narishkeit and you'll move past it. Because that's not typical. So I'm wondering what goes into the equation to have you be able to read secular books in your parents' home,
Right.
Like on Shabbat or a holiday in front of everyone, like not under your covers.
Right.
At that point.
Right. I would just get all these books, and so I ended up having this huge plastic container under my bed where there were, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred books. And my mother, every time when I would leave for yeshiva, my mother would kind of joke that maybe when I came back home the next time, the books would be gone. We'd give them to the library. No need to hold on to these donation. Things. Right. And I mean, it pained me. I mean, I worked hard to get these, but I was so deeply attached to them. I became obsessed with books. Yeah. I felt like I was among friends. I had companionship with these books. So the idea that my mother would ship off my friends and cut me off from them was very upsetting compared to other people. Right. Some people who grew up in the Hasidic community, my experience may be more lax. Right. More, my parents may have had a more lenient philosophy. Maybe the fact that my parents, as you say, were Bali Tshuva, they came to Lubavitch as adults. Maybe also like would other Lubavitch parents who didn't have that journey, that trajectory, would they act in a similar way? Maybe. Right. Lubavitch might be more lenient in this sense than Satmar or some other Hasidic group. It could be a part of it, but again, definitely experientially at the time, I did not think that they were being lenient.
Right, of course not.
That within Lubavitch, there are these different communities that I mentioned. They sometimes have different policies in terms of whether or not they teach any English, and if so, how much. And that's usually based on the kind of local dynamic. If people are pushing, especially maybe people who didn't grow up in the Lubavitch community, and they want their children to get some secular education. Right. So the point is, when I would go to Lubavitch summer camps, where we would mix the kids from Crown Heights, from Brooklyn, and kids from Miami or California, whatever, those kids knew how to read. They're out-of-towners. And I always felt, yes, this is not an uncommon thing, but I felt very ashamed, and they used to make fun of us, which may be why I felt ashamed. But they used to have all these songs about Ola Torah. So Ola Torah, the tents of Torah, is the name of the kind of one of the flagship Lubavitch schools in Crown Heights. That was a school that I attended, and
you're really in the nucleus there.
We were very much at the heart of the Lubavitch educational system, and at that school there was absolutely zero secular education whatsoever. People, kids in the Lubavitch summer camp would make fun of us, not just me, but all the Ola Torahniks, the kids who would go to the Ola Torah school and didn't know how to read at all. And it was very embarrassing.
It's interesting that they made fun of you, because I would think that there would be some kind of respect for that, since you were in the realest of deals, right? Like it wasn't a thing that you needed, but they understood that you also very plainly couldn't read English.
Yes, and I mean, I take your point, and I think their parents might have said, "Oh, these are
that's the real
truest, purest kids." Yeah. Okay, great, but they're little rotten kids when they're off at summer camp trying to make fun of their bunkmate. They have to land on something, and one of the things they landed on was, "Hey, you're an ignoramus. You don't know how to read." And I think the breaking point for me, I mentioned in the book, was when I went to get my my passport, because as a good Lubavitcher, we assumed I would be traveling at some point, doing Lubavitch outreach activities, and So my father, knowing my situation, he had filled out the entire form for the passport, but he left blank the signature area because it says you have to sign it in front of the official.
Right.
And so he went to the post office, and there was a woman behind this bulletproof glass, and my father shows her the form, and he says, "Oh, this is not signed," and she's like, "Okay, sign it." And I look at my father, and he looks at me like, "What are we supposed to do now?" And so my father says, "Okay, well, we'll just take the form, and we'll come back."
Right.
And I don't know if she suspected some kind of ruse, something was afoot, or just because the policy is you have to watch.
Right.
And she's like, "Sign it right here." And so then my father took a piece of paper and he wrote out my signature, and he had me kind of go over it a couple times to get the hang of it. And then he's like, "Well, that's good enough."
Good enough. It's a signature.
It's a signature.
Right.
And he's like, "Do it." And I did it. And I mean, the whole experience was mortifying.
Right.
I was like 15, 16-year-old kid, and I couldn't sign my own name.
You weren't a member of Footsteps at the time.
Not early on. I became a member when I was in grad school, so after I already sort of left the community.
You were lucky enough to have a community of people or a small network of people to help you make inroads into, life beyond Crown Heights. And Footsteps was certainly around during that time. Had you heard anything about Footsteps, or was that something that you considered as a stepping stone on your way to examine life beyond Crown Heights?
Yeah, so I definitely heard of Footsteps because there were articles about Malky Schwartz, the founder of Footsteps. And so I knew about it as this kind of thing that's out there. But at the same time, as you mentioned, like I had a leg up compared to a lot of other people who were leaving or in kind of similar places in our journey, because I had non-Orthodox relatives. Maybe not surprisingly, once I started to leave the community, my mother would often tell me that she now regrets, or thinks that she should regret, that she had this ongoing relationship with her non-Lubavitch, non-Orthodox family members. But we were around non-Orthodox people, and I think that had influence on me, not necessarily in terms of from a young age, thinking about leaving the Lubavitch community. I really was not thinking about leaving. But once I started to leave, I think that it felt less alien and less terrifying, although there was still a lot of alienation and a lot of fear, but less alienating and less terrifying than other people who are going through a similar journey from other Hasidic communities who may never have known anyone who's not Orthodox growing up. And so, for them, Footsteps is often a literal lifeline where they're able to connect with other people who are going through this process and essentially get the message that this is okay, that this is a perfectly moral and ethical thing to do, that this is something that could be psychologically healthy. These are messages that I needed those for sure, but maybe not as urgently as some others.
That makes a lot of sense. When did you join Footsteps?
Right. So I joined Footsteps when I was in grad school. I was sort of interested in Footsteps. I was thinking about it, but then it turned out my dissertation was about people who grew up in the Hasidic community and left. And I was like, well, what's happening at Footsteps? I mean, like this was just like an obvious thing to find out who was there, what were they like, and especially as I was thinking about my own experience and exploring the experience of other people who went through this journey, I'm like, what's happening at Footsteps? So I became a member. I was very, very excited a couple of years ago when I was asked to join the board of Footsteps, and that felt like a really powerful experience for me because Footsteps and its mission have a real warm place in my heart, and I felt like I was able to give back some of my experience, my insights, both that I acquired through my own experience as well as my academic training. So this has been a very exciting new chapter in my life, being a member of the board of Footsteps and trying to help contribute to the tremendous work that the organization does. Footsteps actually played a really pivotal role in my life because once I was already married, there was this dynamic between me and my family, especially my parents, that they expected whenever I showed up in Crown Heights, I would dress a certain way. And my wife, she would have to dress a certain way as well. So this became a major problem in my marriage. And then I came just sort of randomly to a Footsteps event discussion group, and it was before a Jewish holiday, and people were talking about sort of the trauma or stress about showing up at their Orthodox family and how to deal with it. And it was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, this is my issue. Basically encouraged me to have a really honest conversation with my parents and tell them this is where I am. I cannot continue doing this. And eventually my mother said, like, I hear you. I hear everything you're saying. Let's see, what we need to do, how we need to change things in order to make this work for you. And I would never have had the courage. I was terrified. I mean, really profoundly terrified because I love my family. I love my parents. And I wanted and want to maintain a loving relationship with them, but I couldn't continue, doing what we were doing, and it was because of Footsteps. And I think really to go back to the issue of me being on the board, I think that one of the things that motivated me to take this on was because I know that Footsteps is this resource, this profound resource for so many people, that they really helps them be able to function, be able to live meaningful and healthy lives. And so I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
That's so nice.
My memoir, Brooklyn Odyssey, is out now. It talks about my life growing up in the Lubavitch Hasidic community and my journey out of that community. And I hope you enjoy it.